Well, it's really great to see the familiar faces. Hey, thanks for coming on today. So I think we're gonna be discussing today. I may or may not actually work with somebody, but I've got a few things to say to set up where I'm coming from in looking at the cultural divides that are plaguing humanity today, these days. And we're going to be talking about the COVID facts and feelings and that sort of thing that we're each aware of. But first, I want to look at the bigger picture, which is there's some kind of a breakdown going on in our collective sense making, in our ability to agree on what's real. I'm choosing to see this breakdown as an indication that, well, first of all, that the problems, I really think the problems that humanity is facing today and the complexity of these things are above our job description to resolve. You know, the human mind and humans' ability to collaborate and problem solve together is not what it would need to be in order to really solve the problems of today, like climate change and all the things that require global cooperation as well as cooperation between polarized groups. So we're in sort of an evolutionary crisis. And like when Barbara Marx Hubbard wrote her book, Conscious Evolution, she came up with this very interesting finding that looked at evolution of all kinds, you know, social evolution, biological evolution. And she came up with this term called evolutionary driver, that every once in a while in the history of life on Earth, there'll be some crisis that forces humanity to go to a higher level of, I'm going to say, seeing, being, coping. It just like and she calls it an evolutionary leap. I know her. I was very close friends with her. She died, but I was very close friends with her. And I know she tends to have this optimistic bias. So I always listen to theorists and ask myself, okay, what's their cognitive bias? And, you know, that's just her personality. And so all of us have all these different cognitive biases too. So I'm just throwing that in right now. There's all kinds of biases in our personalities that make it hard for us to really see the whole picture. But what I'm comforting myself with the belief that whether I'm dead or alive, I don't know, but some call, there's a call, this collective crisis is a call to go both deeper into understanding our own individual psyches, how we're conditioned, how we're programmed, our cultural trauma, our individual trauma. So, you know, I'm very interested in working with triggers, which is the going deeper. And also, I think we're being called as a human race to go higher, to see things, to get out of our own narrow perspective and try to see things from a lot of different angles at once. That's the holding complexity piece. So we've got to go higher and deeper in order to even begin to communicate about thgoing charged issues. So that's my frame. I'm going to take a sip of water here. And then most of you on this call, it's a small group today, know the work of Getting Real, where I start the book out with the idea that we need to shift from the right, safe, and certain, you know, everybody thinks they're right, from that paradigm to the real, unique, and open to surprise mindset. And open to surprise is really what I'm thinking is the next step for human evolution, because we can't solve problems by figuring them out in the old ways. There's an ability to be in the present moment, aware of all the changes that are coming at you like a surfer surfs a wave. So the image of getting real, what that work is trying to prepare us for, and of course we're not there most of the time as humans, but the ability to be in a flow with life and to go, oh, this person said this unexpected thing to me. All right, let me just make space for that, check in. How do I feel? What do I see? What do I imagine? What do I already know about this person? And quickly choose a response that truly accounts for a lot more of the picture than most of us are able to see right now due to our, evolutionary limitations. We're just not evolved enough yet, but we're being called, and the getting real truth skills are about stepping into the unknown with other people, being honest, taking risks, saying, I notice there's a bruise on your arm, and I'm afraid to mention that, but I can't not see it. Would you be willing to talk to me about that? And then the other person denies it and says, no, that's not really a bruise, or that's, that was a da da da. They say something that you don't believe, and then you're in this awkward conversation. But being able to stay engaged and then go, okay, when I hear you say that, I'm thinking, should I pursue this? Maybe be a pain in the ass? Or should I just back off and, forget that? And now that's going to be kind of unfinished business in the back of my mind whenever I see you. These are the ordinary challenges of being in a world, is do I stay engaged and communicate? Do I even have the skills to do that at the risk that the other person won't like me? Or do I sort of back off, let it be? And, the answer to that, the best, most beneficial to the whole situation option, it changes. Sometimes the best thing is just to hang in there and grapple with the person and say, no, I'm not letting this go. And sometimes the best option is to back off. And then a lot of times the best option is to pause and look inward first before you go further if you start to get frustrated. And that's the trigger work that we've been doing. Okay, so given that frame, that's what we're here for. We're here to evolve together and also just support each other in what's coming up for each of us around the differences or between people who are vaxxed and not vaxxed, who are making different choices regarding that, who are okay about the mask mandates that are coming up, and people who are not okay. And, some of us have a foot in both worlds. We may be vaxxed, but not okay with the mask mandates. We're not all lumped in one place. And so, we're going to have this conversation to try to help illuminate that. One more frame, and then I want to let people talk. And this is back to truth skill number 1 in the Getting Real book, which is how important it is to know the difference between what you see and hear and what you imagine or think. So I'm going to put a screen share on just to remind us of that. And then I'm going to ask you guys to share about some things. So this screen share, I often put this up on a board in my in-person workshops. On the one side is your experience, what you see, hear, feel, sense, imagine. Now, in this case, we're talking about COVID facts, let's say. So I'm just I'm just including things that you've read, things that you remember somebody saying, things that you've seen with your own eyes. These are what I mean facts, things that I've heard with my own ears. So that's what I'm calling facts today. Some people would call something else facts. I mean, there are actual facts that we didn't see, hear, recall, read. But in our conversation, I think the best definition for any conversation around these kinds of conflicting points of view, the best definition of fact is just what's your own data that you actually saw or heard. And it doesn't mean you did your own scientific research in some lab at the National Institute of Health. It doesn't mean you're a scientist. Maybe you read an article. So that's, for you, that's a fact. I read this in a CDC report, or I read this in the New York Times. That's a fact. Opinions are the conclusions you draw from what you read, see, hear, or have experienced. You know, some people, you know, live with somebody who had long COVID, or maybe you live with somebody who got the vaccine but still got COVID. You know, lots of different facts. Those are actually your experiences. Opinions are things, all the things that the mind does with the fact that you read that, or that your partner had COVID, and so forth. All the things over on the right side, your mental conversation, that's what I'm calling opinion today. So we're going to be careful today about facts versus opinions. So there's going to be some kind of an exercise. I mean, this is, I'm not going to like guide an exercise too much, although I'm going to guide a sharing in a minute that will have you try to make a distinction between something that you heard, saw, experienced, read, and then tell us what conclusion you drew. So my belief then is, so I'll give you an example of that. I read, so here's my fact. I read in the New York Times today that suicide attempts in the United States are up 51% for teenage boys aged 12 to 17 since the beginning of COVID, since March 2020. And this was from a CDC study. So I read that suicide attempts are up. What conclusion? What's the mental conversation? What's the opinion I draw from that? I believe this is due to school lockdowns. And I believe, and I could also say, I believe school lockdowns have been too aggressive. So you can believe anything that you want, draw any conclusion you want from a fact. Okay, here's another fact. I'm just giving you just two examples. I read in the Huffington Post that long COVID is rare in children, and that for children, COVID symptoms are more like the typical flu. So my belief that I draw from that fact, because if anything I read, it's not saying that the research was absolutely factual. You know, research can be biased and that sort of thing. But the fact that I read this, and I'm just saying I read this study and this is what this study said, that's good enough to be a fact in this conversation. And my opinion on that one would be, I believe they should not, children should not have their lives upended, like school closures, cancel sports, to protect adults. So people can differ with some of my conclusions. They can differ with some of my facts, but that's the territory that we're going to be conversing in today. And then we'll look at feelings in here in a little while. So before I go further, what I'm going to be asking you to do is share, anybody who's willing to share. And I'm glad that you have your screens on, because we'll also be doing some show hands, how many people agree with this? How many people were triggered by that? That type of thing in a little while too. But the exercise that I want to do first is do what I just did. Think of a fact, something you read or heard or some way experienced. And then what's the opinion you draw from that? You may, it's a lot. I think I'm springing this on you, and I'm having the intuition that a lot of people will have a bunch of opinions and they'll go, yeah, but what's the fact that I base that opinion on? Was there any? Well, I know there was something, but I can't remember what it was. So if I'm not going to be rigid here, there's no test or anything. So if that's the situation for you, you have an opinion, a belief, something like that, and you just have no real idea of where that came from, of the fact associated with that, go ahead and share that too. Okay, so any questions or comments about anything that I've said here? Okay, Debbie, hi.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have a little story to tell, which I think speaks to this whole discussion quite well. I'm a progressive type person, got my vaccinations, not my booster yet, but got my vaccinations. My cousin, who's very conservative, has not gotten vaccinated, has her reasons. We were talking on the phone and she said in the conversation, yes, and it's gotten really bad in Australia. They're putting the unvaccinated into concentration camps. I said, Kathy, good grief, that's the second time you've said that. I don't believe it, but I'm going to check it out. She said, okay. So I checked it out. And we're supposed to be able to trust the sources that we find that have some merit. Oh, I see someone laughing. Thank you very much. I agree. But so I think the source that I first read was PolitiFact. It was along the lines of Snopes and PolitiFact, the ones that claim to be fact checkers. And that source, along with several other more mainstream things like the Wall Street Journal and things like that, they said, oh no, they're not concentration camps. It's people who come back from international travel in Australia. They need to quarantine for 2 weeks, 14 days in a specific place. Yeah, but it's not a bad place and it's only for 14 days. So that's no concentration camp. They have food and TV and air conditioning, and then they're allowed to leave. And they do some tests. They get some COVID tests while they're there 3 times. Well, that should be all well and good. Kathy's wrong. Okay, but I scrolled down further. And I found a video interview on a site called Unheard, UNHERD. Fellow did a marvelous job interviewing this young woman in Australia who was put in one of these lockdown places because she was in contact with an infected person. They contact traced her, approached her, authorities did, and said, so you know this person, you've been in contact? She said, yes, I have, and quite a bit. They said, well, did you get tested? Because you know this person, it has COVID. She said, yes, I did get tested. Unfortunately, that was a lie. They came back a day or so later and said, we can't find any proof in the system that you did this self-test or went and got tested. Pack your things, you're going to camp. She said, but why can't I self-isolate like the other people who were in contact? They said, I don't know, we're told from up above, you're going to camp. So they took her. And I would say the whole thing could have been hoaxed, except she inserted a video from inside the room at this facility, looking out at the guards or whatever, who were telling her, no, you must stay in your room, or if you leave, put a mask on, or we will fine you $5,000. Can we be clear about this? I mean, just do the right thing, lady. So she was complaining that she felt small, she felt controlled, she felt overwhelmed. It was all wrong, it was bad. Okay, regardless of how she felt, my concern is that it was so hard to find out that this was true. And then I read other facts that yes, they are building more of these facilities throughout Australia. And it's just, Kathy was not entirely right. It's not exactly a concentration camp where they have to stay forever and they're beaten and deprived of food, and, but it's kind of true. So why was it so hard to find that? And that makes it so hard for us to know whether our opinions are based on fact and good sources. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah. So the fact part of that, Debbie, was, and I'll thank you so much. That was that was very interesting. The fact part of that is all, all the stuff that you heard and read, and then your opinion about, one of the opinions I heard you say was, gee, they make it so hard to actually find out what's really going on.
Mhm.
And why is that, kind of thing. That was part of your opinion too. And any other opinion you want to share on that?
I don't know if it's an opinion, but it makes me very glad that I have been willing to listen to people who have differing opinions from mine about this whole issue.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
So
very
good. So then if we want to just be careful about our language, that's a feeling. So that's an actual felt experience, and you can feel that gladness. It has an energy to it. So I'm being kind of picky about my language here today, because I really think to make proper sense of a chaotic reality, it's important. What's the difference between what I think and what I feel, what I see, what I imagine? And so that got us off to a good start, Debbie. Anyone else want to make any kind of comment? Eileen.
Hi, Debbie, that was great. I also saw that interview and it was very profound to me. As I'm listening to this discussion, I want to share that my heart is pounding, because this topic is so difficult to me. My whole life, I've always poked around for the truth. And the truth is the most evasive thing around right now. And I understand I read something in the New York Times, so therefore it's a fact that I read it.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for me, because we have none of us have any guarantee that anything we're reading or hearing is an actual fact. And so the helplessness that poor girl in Australia was experiencing, I feel on a smaller level is true for all of us, because we live in a country where we thought we could trust the news. And I have spent more time on this hobby of trying to find the truth for the last 2 years than I have on any of my pleasurable hobbies. And I'm just obsessed with, maybe today I can find the truth. And that's what I want to say. That's the biggest piece for me. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, Eileen. I want to comment on that. I think this evolutionary driver and this chaotic truth environment, fragmentation of truth. This person could say anything, and if they're in authority, people believe them, and all of that stuff. We're being asked to to become a little more comfortable with uncertainty. I mean, I could feel in my heart, you're caring, Eileen. What I imagine is you're caring for truth, and I think a lot of us would share that caring for truth and the frustration. And the picture that I'm painting for myself is the world is more uncertain than it's been before. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening where we can't get to the actual source or and research. I mean, I got a PhD and I taught in a graduate school, and I supervised research for 10 years. I worked for pharmaceutical companies. I understand how research can be biased, even when it's not intended to be biased, but a lot of times it can be. So where do you go to find the truth? We're being called to embrace uncertainty and to try to find the little kernels of truth over here, and there's maybe a little kernel of truth over there, that I, with my own life experience, would not know. I have a relative who lives in the South. She was a school teacher during the times when forced integration in school busing, black-white integration in the South was going on. So her ideas about, I mean, this is a little bit old news, you know, but the conversations that we used to have, I'm from the North. I never would believe in slavery. I would never believe, I never would think segregation in terms of educational opportunity was a good idea. But I didn't understand her point of view. She had a little kernel of the truth. I'm not going to tell you, the whole conversations, but when I talk to somebody who has a very different life experience than I, and sounds kind of racist to me, then I go, well, remembering that experience with her from many years ago, that I went, oh, well, there's some things I don't see about the disadvantages for the schools and the teachers and the kids' actual learning. There's some real problems with forced integration. Now, I mean, I see a much bigger picture than that myself, because that's just the way I think. I don't really think in, that this that's happening today is all there is, because, I see things and where are they going? Where's society going if this trend continues? But still, I have become fascinated in what's the little bit of actual reality that I can't see, because I've never had those experiences. So I just want to put that out there too, that's where I'm coming from in terms of embracing uncertainty and realizing maybe I don't have the final word on things, that my view is partial. So embracing uncertainty includes the idea that my view, that I can only know one little piece of the picture and somebody else has a different piece and somebody else has a different piece. And how are we going to develop the patience to dig, like you did, Debbie, to really dig and find sources and find out, well, where's this person coming from? There's so many things that condition what a person can see and even can allow themselves to believe. In my first COVID culture war webinar that I did several months ago, I talked about our perceptual biases, like what part of the country we grew up in, what our emotional trigger sensitivities are, what subgroups we identify with, whether we identify with college educated people or people who think that those people are snobs. What subculture do I identify? All those kinds of things are filters. So knowing how much filtering there is on an individual level, how much manipulation there is in terms of the power structure of a country or a society, how would we ever be certain? How would we ever be able to relax and say, oh, that's the truth? So I'm trying to shake everybody's cage here, and even though we want the truth, and there is truth, but how do we find it? How does any one person, or how does even a collective find it in order to make good collaborative decisions for the good of the whole? So other comments?
Okay, so
Yeah, Gail, go ahead.
so I've been sitting here listening to this, and so I have several different facts that I believe, but I'm going to address the one of them, and that is, this is based on my experience as a nurse. I'm a nurse for 12 years, and I was a nurse in the 70s and the early 80s. So
Mhm.
a lot of experience with that.
Mhm.
And since then, I've also learned about other ways of managing health outside of the medical model. So the facts that I've read, and it's upsetting to me to even say this, but I've had a belief for a while that a lot of what has been going on has been driven by pharma, that pharma has taken over a lot of stuff and made decisions. And I knew that from my experience where drugs were approved at one point, then pulled off the market after they were fully approved. Oh, gee, a lot of people died. I know from books I've read that have researched regarding the long-term effects of vaccines and also other medications that weren't shown. So that's some of my facts.
Mhm.
I just recently got the book purchased by Robert Kennedy. Robert Fauci, Big Pharma, War on Democracy.
Mhm.
And the first chapter made me feel really infuriated because there's loads of research in there backed from big medical companies, independent people, and it validated the facts that I believe, and way worse than when I was in the 60s and 70s, about the fact that pharma is really taking control over medical decisions. And that is the facts that I have. And there's lots of pages that are backing that up. And even independent scientists that don't agree with all that. So my belief is, and my frustration is that I understand people don't have the background and the experience that I do. And this is a judgment too, Susan. So I'm going to acknowledge it as a judgment that some people, because of my perception is because of the fear, they don't want to maybe look at the impact that pharma has had on our culture in general, and specifically COVID and the mentality with vaccines. And the other facts that just came up for me is when they now advertise drugs on TV, which they never used to when I was in nursing, they say right on there, these are all the side effects. You shouldn't take things because of these side effects. Yet in the culture with vaccines, there's no holds barred. Everybody's okay with everything. So,
Okay, so that's a really good one to kind of, I think, coalesce the group around. So I'm gonna restate what you said as kind of a fact, and then
Right.
I want other people to state their opinion on this fact. So what I wrote down is, I have witnessed pharmaceutical companies skewing research and denying dangerous side effects. Would that be good enough for a fact?
yeah.
I mean, I'm grossly simplifying what you said.
Right. And using their power. Yes.
You know, because it has to be, to be a fact, we could make a generalization. We could say, you know, big pharma has been known to deny side effects and punish the doctors. I mean, we could go on, you know, and punish doctors who are whistleblowers, you know. I mean, we could get the generalizations, you know. So that's another whole danger area, is please know when you're making a generalization, because just in terms of like what Debbie shared about lockdowns or the 2-week quarantine in Australia. I mean, we could overgeneralize that and say, you know, people are being quarantined in a way that is against their will and blah, blah, blah. But I personally happen to know a number of Americans who go back and forth to Australia, who live part-time there too, who loved the quarantine. They said it's like, you know, it's like the Hilton, you know, and room service, and it's amazing, you know. So, I mean, I personally have had conversations. So like, we just have to, I don't doubt what you said, Debbie, at all, but we just have to watch the generalization function of the human mind, because the mind is addicted to certainty. We just really hate ambiguity, and that is a generalization right there. And I caught myself. All righty. Hope you'll forgive me. So I've witnessed pharmaceutical research both being skewed in terms of the results, and pharmaceutical companies denying dangerous side effects. Let's just say something like that. That's a restatement of Gale's fact. Anybody want to share a belief or an opinion about that fact? Anything? I mean, you could actually say, I believe it, but I don't care, so I guess that's a feeling. So you can make either a belief out of that, or you could have a feeling about that. But I want us to be careful about what we call what, so we don't mess up our minds any more than they're already messed up.
Okay. All right. I've been an activist for 17, 18 years. I'll be 77 this next month. I have been I started feeling like something really weird was going on with all this, lockdowns and masks and people losing jobs and everything. So I need to get that away. So last summer in July, I began to do a lot of research, and I have done a ton of research since. And what Gale says is, in my opinion, very true. I have my cousin's wife, my only family here. They're about 40 minutes away. She's taught me a lot about vaccines over the years. And vaccines, we get way too many. Kids now have to get 72 vaccines between the time they're born and they're 18. And these vaccines have side effects, and it's known when you find the truth. But, of course, people like Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, the global people, the people that are backing all of this, it's not right. And we have censorship. I sent you an email, Dr. Susan. You probably didn't see it or have time to read it, but Trusted News Initiative. This is a thing that bears on the fact that we have an incredible amount of censorship. And so this article that I read, if you look up Trusted News Initiative, Trusted News Initiative, you'll find, well, then of course, once they are online, then there's a bunch of people that say, no, that's not true. But, you read it, I think you're going to think it's true, because there was an agreement in December of 2020 by, all the major news and social media companies in the world, that they would only say what they were asked to say by the powers that be. So, this just makes me sick. And children, okay, people really do get sick. My college girlfriend, I recently got a hold of her, and she and her husband were against taking the vaccine, but then their daughter said, you can't come over unless you take it. So then they finally took it. Well, he got Bell's palsy for 6 weeks and was treated, and finally got better. But there's just, I know a lot of places to go to get information. And I'm a researcher by nature. And I agree with Eileen. I have to find the truth. I'm not comfortable when there's no truth. And, I don't know. I wish I weren't like this sometimes, because then I get very upset and very, very angry, and I can feel powerless, even if, because most of the activists I know in the west suburbs of Chicago also, they're going along with the mainstream. It just upsets me no end. But this is the person I am. I can't help it. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me, my last name is Milo, M-I-L-O-W. M as in Mary, I-L-O-W, Sally Milo, at peoplepc.com. Or you can see me on Facebook, but then I don't post this stuff on Facebook because I'll be taken down. I know so many people's stuff has been taken down. There's so much censorship. This is not right. This is not, I don't know. I guess a lot of what I'm saying is opinion, but Susan, Dr. Susan, I'm not sure that your approach is like, I'm not sure your approach is that helpful. But I love your work, but it's like in today's world, there's so much, I don't know if you can apply that to today's world so easily. I wish you could, but.
Yeah, Sally, I want to dialogue a little bit. You stated a lot of that as opinion. You stated it and you just acknowledged that. I believe that, and this may not be helpful, but I believe that if you would state something, if you're in an argument with somebody, and if you, for example, would say, I know.
Talk to people about this, where the Midwest is like dumb. They don't want to know the truth, California, the Unity Project, the Unity Project in California. They're against the vaccine. They're having protests. They're located in Los Angeles, the Unity Project. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much of an approach to resolving this, but this is part of my research, Sally. So my thinking is that if you are in a conversation, I get that, you choose not to have those, but first of all, I have a big bias toward giving us the tools we need to stay in respectful conversations, even if we're sort of a pain in the ass to the other person. I have a big bias in favor of risking being a pain in the ass rather than just avoiding. But I'm in no way meaning to criticize you when I say that.
And I could learn from you in that respect.
Yeah, and what I wanted to pick up on, and this really is research for me, having these calls, and you guys are helping me develop, well, what's the next teaching that humanity needs here? And I'm coming into this with the hypothesis, Sally, that if you would say, I read in JFK Jr.'s book that kids get 17 vaccines before the age of 18.
72.
I know my friends, had side effects. I believe that saying it more as this is just a hypothesis now, and I want to get people's feedback on this. I believe that if we were able to state things more as I read, or I had this experience, like I know this this example of censorship. I know when I said this, I was taken off of Facebook. If you were to state them more as facts, they would be less triggering to another person, because there's a little more ownership rather than I'm right, And so that's a hypothesis that I'm coming into this call with. Any opinions on that?
I have a
Karen.
question.
Or questions or anything, yeah.
Yeah, I have just a question about the truth. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, and then we'll have
Um,
Karen after that. So I saw her.
Yes,
but go ahead.
so I thought that the truth vibrates or has a specific vibration or frequency that we can feel. And so my question is,
Mhm.
how can we find the truth? So maybe we can find the truth in our bodies. So maybe we can feel this vibration in our bodies, because there is even this phrase, something rings true to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, David
and-
Hawkins, do you know David Hawkins' work?
yeah.
On
yeah.
calibration, and I really, there's something to this, but David Hawkins is a lot more developed, I believe, than most of us humans.
Oh yeah.
It's a matter of human development. That's my opinion. Listen to David Hawkins. Get a podcast with him, and you listen to how you feel when you're listening to him, and then you feel how you feel when you're listening to some of the rest of us. My opinion is he's in a class by himself. He's onto something. It's something we could all strive for. Anything else?
So which means we can feel this truth in our body. So we can get
not
the
all of
feeling
us.
as a truth.
No, you can't when you're so clogged up with unfinished childhood business and fear of communicating with people who are different from you. No, you can't feel it then. You're not refined enough as a human. That's where I come down on this. But I want to hear back from you, Dinah. What is your name, Dinah or Dina?
It's Dina.
Dina, I'm just shooting my mouth off here because I don't know for sure any of this, but I want to let you know me. So what do you think about what I just said? That most of us are not at the level where we can trust
Yeah, because we
all of
do
our
not
experience. Yeah, we
feel.
can trust some of it, some of the real flagrant lies, we can kind of resonate. Oh, that's chaotic, but not to the extent that that we can just go around and say, yeah, I can trust the vibe that I feel. I think we should at least try, though, to see what is the vibe. Do I get a vibe of truth?
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, we can at least check.
The more we are here, then
Data source. So
more
thank you.
difficult.
That's another data source for us. Let's just call it what the vibe is.
Mhm.
Thank you. See, I think collective conversation puts different little pieces of what we might call truth, truth with a small t at least, into the conversation. So that's what I'm looking for here. Thank you, Dina. Karen, what were you going to
Hi,
say?
Susan. Hello,
Hey
everybody.
there.
Hi. There's something for me here about the truth, the only truth, nothing but one truth. And I think there's many versions of truth as we all carry it and know it. And so what I wrote down was collaborated by the whole or dictated by the few. And I think if there's 6 of us at the table, everybody's truth should hold equal weight and get to matter equally in the circle. That's where I live with it. That all of our truths should get to matter, and that we try not to pronounce our truth as the truth. Because that's where I feel my squirminess and my resistance is, like when I feel like a truth is being dictated to me. And there's no room for anybody else's truth in the mix.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm aware that both Karen and I made sort of some pronouncements. I made this big pronouncement in response to Dina about that most of us are not at the level of David Hawkins. And Karen, made her own pronouncement about all truths, should be should have a seat at the table. I mean, you may argue or not argue with that, but when people make pronouncements, my theory is it's more likely to be triggering to people. So that's something I'm still wanting to get a little data on. Anybody got any opinions about that?
Oh, you said when someone makes pronouncements, it's triggering, and I was thinking when someone makes pronouncements, that's when I'm most suspect. I'm like, if you have to make it a pronouncement, most likely it's not really true.
This is the kind of thing I'm looking for now, is just, yeah, people's personal reactions. Thanks, Scott. Thank you very much.
It's like thou dost protest too much.
And did you notice actually in this conversation when people were making generalizations or pronouncements that you had a little more resistance than when people were talking about, like, you know, Gail talking about being a nurse and her own experience and stuff? Did you find yourself more relaxed and open here in this call at all? Or is that more of a statement you're making based on other settings?
Yeah, I definitely had that experience as well. I say noticing when someone is what I would call like building their case, you know, like saying, these are my qualifications. This is, you know, I read a lot, all that stuff like that, which is all good information. I get it. And at the same time, it's I hear it as you're building the case of like why I should believe your facts or opinion. So yeah, that's something that
So I'm curious,
how
how did it affect you when I said the thing about most people are not at the level of consciousness of David Hawkins? Because I feel a little bit shy about having said that. A little, you know, like, wow, should I have said that? That's a bit of a big pronouncement, you know. How did you feel when I said that, Scott?
Well, first of all, I thought of it more of kind of like a euphemism, as just you know, saying in fact, comparing any of us to David Hawkins is kind of like sort of duh, you know, of course. So yeah, I guess it did kind of land with me sort of like as a generalization that says we're not all that smart, which is in some ways it's kind of like diminishing everyone's opinion.
Mhm.
And yet at the same time, it's, you know, I think it's like, sure, of course it's true, you know, but at the same time, I'm sure there's plenty of things David Hawkins doesn't know about. He had actually a relatively limited thing that he focused on for the most part.
Yeah. So this is great. I wish this could go on longer. I want to make a few summary statements. I'm really enjoying this, but I can't go on because I have an appointment in 3 minutes. So just to summarize, the things that I'm trying to leave with us today are some hypotheses. When we make generalizations, pronouncements, when we talk about opinion as if it's fact, in the Getting Real work in our groups, I believe that the conclusion has been there's more likely to be resistance in another person when you talk about opinions as facts, rather than when you talk about, this is my experience, this is what I read, this is what I feel, this is what I see, what I heard. So to me, that's the utility, possibly, of the Getting Real work, is knowing the difference between when you're speaking from your experience and when you're not. Because I really do think it's not just my responsibility to speak my truth in the best possible way. Part of that is I want it to land. I care about being heard. I care about our connection. So I just kind of want to leave us with that for now. Man, my mind is buzzing with all kinds of things, and I imagine there's unexpressed things here with some of you. And if you want to write these in an email to me, I would welcome that, because this is ongoing research. You know, I want to end by saying I'm as confused as I've ever been about how to help us humans. But you guys have illuminated some of those dark corners for me today. Thanks.
May I say something?
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Joy, but I wish we had more time.
This is the problem.
I'm gonna have to, yeah, well, I'm sorry, there is a problem, I have a commitment, elsewhere, and, I do feel torn. So thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, Susan. Ciao.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.